On a rainy evening in November, Edgar Blythe, a seasoned collector of antiquities, strolled through the quiet alleyways of a forgotten district. His life was dedicated to finding rare and unusual items, the kind that held stories of a distant past, often tragic and almost always intriguing. This time, however, Edgar stumbled upon something far more sinister, a mask that would haunt his very soul. Inside the shop, Edgar's attention was drawn to a beautifully crafted Venetian mask, seemingly untouched by time. It was unlike anything he'd ever seen. The mask was adorned with intricate gold designs and delicate feathers, but what caught Edgar's eye the most was the expression, hauntingly serene, yet with eyes that seemed to hold a shadow of fear. "That mask carries a curse," warned the shopkeeper, his voice a low whisper. "They say it belonged to a noblewoman who attended her final masquerade ball 300 years ago. She was found dead in her room, the mask still upon her face, her expression frozen in horror." He paused, his eyes narrowing. "Those who wear it are doomed to see her final visions. Some say the mask steals their soul to keep the curse alive." But as Edgar left the shop, he couldn't shake the feeling that he was being watched. And when he looked back, the shop seemed to blend into the darkness as if it had never been there. Back at his home, Edgar carefully placed the mask in his collection room, surrounded by other rare objects he'd amassed over the years. But unlike the other items, the mask seemed to draw the light around it, casting eerie shadows that stretched along the walls. Despite its beauty, Edgar felt an inexplicable unease. Over the next few nights, Edgar began to experience strange occurrences. He'd find himself inexplicably drawn to the mask, unable to look away. And every time he looked at his reflection, he saw not himself, but the faint, ghostly image of a woman. Her eyes filled with unspeakable terror. Each night, Edgar was transported into vivid nightmares. He found himself at an opulent ballroom, surrounded by faceless dancers, their laughter echoing unnaturally. Through the woman's eyes, he saw shadowy figures lurking, as if waiting for her, or him. Edgar tried to ignore it, tried to convince himself it was just an overactive imagination. But the mask would not be ignored. It whispered to him, a voice so faint it could almost be mistaken for the wind, yet chilling enough to make his skin crawl. "I see you. I feel you." As days turned to weeks, Edgar's obsession with the mask grew. He couldn't concentrate on anything else. Every thought circled back to the mask and the woman's tragic tale. He researched everything he could find about her, uncovering that her death was believed to be part of a ritual. The more he discovered, the deeper the mask seemed to pull him in. Finally, in a fit of desperation, Edgar donned the mask, convinced that he had to know what truly happened that night. The moment he placed the mask upon his face, his vision blurred, and he was thrust into a chilling scene. He was back in the ballroom, seeing through the eyes of the woman, her heart pounding with fear. The other dancers were silent now, their empty faces turned toward her as if in judgment. She tried to run, but the doors wouldn't budge, and a figure in a dark cloak approached, his eyes glowing with a sinister intent. Edgar reached up, trying to pull the mask off, but it wouldn't move. His fingers dug into the edges, but it was as if the mask had become part of him. He saw his reflection in a mirror, the woman's terrified eyes staring back at him, his face fading into hers. He screamed, but no sound escaped as he was drawn deeper into the vision. When he finally awoke, it was no longer his home he saw, but a dark, empty ballroom, silent and abandoned. Shadows flickered around him, and he realized he was trapped in the mask's eternal curse. And somewhere, in the distant shadows, he heard the faint whispers of others. Souls just like him, forever bound to the mask's twisted legacy. Edgar had vanished, his collection untouched, save for the mask that now bore a faintly familiar face, etched forever in terror. The mask waits, patient as ever, for the next unfortunate soul to gaze upon it and fall under its spell. To this day, the mask remains hidden, passed from one collector to the next. They say if you listen closely, You can hear the faint whisper of those it has claimed, trapped in the dark forever. Remember, some objects are not meant to be collected. If you enjoyed tonight's tale, don't forget to subscribe to EerieTales, and remember, cursed objects have a way of finding those who seek them.